Before we get started, let me introduce someone whose journey truly embodies resilience, leadership, and the heart of Jiu-Jitsu, Teddy Johnston. A retired Marine who turned his passion for martial arts into a life-changing mission, Teddy is the owner of Twisted Kraken Jiu-Jitsu in Jacksonville, North Carolina, where he's built a thriving community grounded in connection, confidence, and purpose. In this episode, Teddy opens up about his early beginnings in wrestling in Kansas City, traveling the world with the Marine Corps, discovering Judo and Jiu-Jitsu in Japan, training under legends like Tony Deblick and Tom DeBlas, and the mentorship that shaped him into the black belt and coach that he is today. We dive deep into what really takes to run a successful academy, the leadership, the curriculum, the business strategy, and the emotional intelligence behind guiding students of all ages. Teddy also shares life-changing wisdom about teaching, building confidence in children, creating a family environment for adults, and overcoming personal adversities, including TBI, a stroke, and rebuilding his life through jiu-jitsu. His story is real, raw, and incredibly inspiring. So get ready, because this episode is packed with mindset, motivation, and the heart of what a true martial artist is all about. What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Kumite Lifestyle. And today I'm joined by one of the individuals that I met at Gracie University. His name is Teddy Johnston. So, Teddy, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, buddy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm loving the jiu-jitsu sign or poster that you have in the background. So I know is that your school logo?
It is
Awesome. So yeah, talk to us about your school real quick and where you guys are located.
wonderful. Our academy is Twisted Kraken Jiu-Jitsu. My market's Jacksonville, North Carolina, Camp Lejeune area. I'm a retired Marine, and so we've been open now since November 2020. We just celebrated 5 years.
Awesome, man. And thank you for your service.
Thank you, buddy.
Yeah, I think that's awesome what you're doing out there. And just to kind of piggyback on what I was saying, so for those watching, when I referenced Gracie University, that's an organization, it's a worldwide organization. And within the Gracie University network, there's a cadre of instructors, if you will. And at that time, Teddy was, you were an assistant instructor out in Colorado under Tony Deblick. And I remember very specifically when I went out to GU, I was pretty nervous, but I was actually more excited. And when it came time to split the room, there were the current certified instructors, yourself, and then the candidates. And then I don't know if it was Henner or Hudon. They said, "All right, all the candidates, all the instructors link up," and it was like an instant connection. You came over to me, and then we ran through our combatives, or I ran through my combatives test. You were my partner, and gave me some good details. And yeah, it was just a good weekend. But the most important thing that I took away, aside from the experience, was the connections with other practitioners like yourself. And I was just blown away on your professionalism and how personable you were. And then when I found out that you were transitioning out to the East Coast and opening up a school, I said, man, that only makes sense. So that's awesome that you've been able to accomplish what you have. And you recently just got your black belt. So I definitely want to talk about that and hear what you've had to kind of go through for the process. But before we do, let's kind of backtrack. When did you first start your martial arts journey or jujitsu?
So I started wrestling at a very young age, in grappling, and Kansas City, Missouri, where I'm from. And so I wrestled all through elementary school, middle school, high school, and afterwards joined the military, like so many, great Americans do. And I came across the Marine Corps martial arts program and I became a certified instructor in that and instructor trainer. And then I got stationed in Iwakuni, Japan. It's about an hour train ride south of Hiroshima,
Yeah.
and started learning judo and jujitsu and there in Japan, and that was in 2008 and 2009. Came to the East Coast, got stationed back at Camp Lejeune, and from there started training at a small certified training facility for Grace University at that point. Uh, Went out to California a bunch of times and trained the Gracie Academy, the old Gracie Academy on Artesia Boulevard there. And then kind of just did like a nomad thing for a couple of years here, and ultimately ended up in Colorado with Professor Tony Deblick there and trained there for almost 5 years as an assistant coach. Got certified there, got through with the rest of my blue belt and purple belt under Henner and Huron. through Tony's guidance, and then ultimately came out here in 2020 as a purple belt. Shortly after we opened, I transitioned from Grace University to uh, Professor Tom DeBlas and Tom DeBlas Association. He's obviously a lot. Most people know he's out of New Jersey. Uh, he's a famous commentator now on One Championship. You can find him on Amazon Prime, usually once a month, doing some great commentation of some amazing jiu-jitsu work there. And he awarded me my brown belt, and then 2 years later, awarded me my black belt.
Man, that's awesome. Man, what a timeline, right? So you started like we all do at some point for a variety of reasons. And I know you mentioned the military and then your travels out to Gracie Academy at the time,
Right.
like the OG school. And then, of course, how that's kind of been linear and just seeing the progression with Gracie Academy, through Gracie University, the physical spot, aside from the online platform, of course, and then your times with Professor Tony Deblek. And that's when I met you. So that's kind of where I insert myself in your timeline. And then, of course, where you are today. Now, you said something initially when you got certified through the military. So I know we get certified, or at least, through Grace University, there's a very specific, rigid process, if you will. As an instructor in the military, if you're willing to share, what's that process like to become certified? So, are you certified to teach like Marine combatives or a very
Mm-hmm.
specific military course? Yeah. So,
Yes.
go ahead. I'm sorry.
So to answer that, there's two processes you go through. There's a 3 week course that you get certified to teach the Marine Corps Martial Arts program. The course itself isn't about learning technique; it's about how do you teach.
Mm,
And so it's a 3 week indoctrination of leadership, from physical training and platform training, so to speak, where you're standing in front of people, public speaking. And it's one of the most amazing leadership courses I ever took, because it's one thing to drink the Kool-Aid, it's another way to sell the Kool-Aid, so to speak. And you learn in depth on how to present almost anything
yeah.
in terms of how to teach it, by explaining, demonstrating, imitating, and practicing. And then from there, for those 3 weeks, regardless of what level of certification you are in terms of the actual technique part, you graduate at a base level, being able to teach about 2/3 of the program. And then from there is on you to continue to go through the levels of advancement. In the Marine Corps, they use a belt program similar to most martial arts,
Hmm.
um, where a black belt signifies the highest level. Then to be able to teach the instructor or train the instructor, so to speak, you go through a 7 week process, and that's only hosted in Quantico, Virginia. And then from there, you learn how to run the 3 week course.
Mm,
And once again, like the way that you and I interacted originally at your certification course is similar in that kind of way. So where I was evaluating you, I have to evaluate the instructor in the Marine Corps and teach them how to teach. And so
yeah.
that's 7 week course. So there's a lot of, when you look at the rigid program that you went through, there's a lot of similarities and mirrors of how to do that. Right. So I would like to think at some point maybe the program that you've gone through, there's a more formal way of everyone that is working with people like yourself that first day that we met, there's a better way of being able to train that person.
Yeah.
And that's the process, that second course that the Marine Corps does. And I think that course is very well thought out and trained. And I got certified in that almost 20 years ago now. It's crazy. I'm a very, very old man now.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, like as I say, time flies and just gaining those life experiences and just as a practitioner and more importantly as an instructor and teacher like you're talking about. And for those that are listening, when we talk about this instructor certification, I think there's this kind of misconception, and I'm just going to use the martial arts because that's what we can kind of caveat off of. We tend to think that, oh, this person's a black belt, they can teach, or they're a brown belt, and we know that not to be the case because you could have all the accolades in the world, but can you really articulate that information to the student or students, what have you? And I remember specifically when I was going through the certification, because I come from a karate background, my instructor, Howard Steele, who you know, um, just an amazing instructor, but always wanting to pursue and get better. And for those that are seeking to teach in any type of facet in business, having a rigid and kind of like a very strict guideline on how to teach professionally in any, I guess, core subject area will help. And I love how you mentioned about when you were in the Marines and you were learning to teach and then teach those that want to become an instructor. It only just makes you that much better. And I have a more better profound appreciation and respect for any instructor and coach that really invest the time to want to better themselves. Because it's easy just to, put a flag up and say, hey, I teach this. And, again, it's all about, you know, I guess the projection or the interpretation could be if you have a lot of students, you're a good teacher, but that's not always the case, And I think because the reason why you are successful is because you've had so many different outlets of how to teach. And I'm sure you kind of use all that in culmination to how you teach today.
Oh, absolutely. I About 2 years ago, someone asked me, "Well, what was the key to your success?"
Yeah.
And I told everyone here that the initial key to my success was the 5 years I spent with Tony,
Yeah.
because he he gave me a huge chance and an opportunity and a big risk that he took where I had no financial interest, and I'm learning all these mistakes
Yeah.
that most gym owners learn in the first year or two, and I'm learning without any financial repercussions. And he's over my shoulder mentoring me and growing me and saying, "Hey, you can't assume this, or you need to adjust this way, or this is why we write the schedule the way we write our schedule, or this is how I pick my next instructor." All those things most gym owners have to learn on their own in a year or 2 years. I got to learn before I even had any sort of financial risk. And so when I opened the doors, I already had a knowledge base and a hands-on experience as if I already owned a gym before. And that's a credit to Tony and the trust he put in me, and a huge risk that he took upon me. And I'll tell you, the next step, honestly, was my transition. It was the biggest risk I ever took in my business, was leaving Grace University and that comfort net of an inbox kind of corporate kind of ran system, and going to Professor Tom DeBlas, where he's he doesn't give you a box to work out of. He takes you and learns about you and invests time in you and learn how to make you better. And so he helped me grow the business into my personality and how to mentor my crew with my personality, rather than, oh, here's these corporate tools to use to be able to better yourself. No, how do we make just Teddy better? How do we personalize that to you?
Mm.
And that's what Tom does with me on a weekly basis, and gives me numbers and gives me conversations and time every week in his busy schedule. And I don't think a lot of people understand, regardless of which association are the heads of these associations, on how much time commitment there is.
Yeah.
Hinter and Hero, and they run like an association of over 200 schools across the world, and they have a small team that helps them. And Tom has 80 schools, but he's so hands on with all 80. And then he's the vice president of one championship, and they're based out of Asia. So he works on three different time zones theoretically every single day. Um, and so, unless there's an enormous amount of caffeine, I don't know how he does it. So yeah, he's an amazing man, and I'm grateful to be a part of his association and everything. And seeing firsthand what he does every single day is amazing, and the fact that he still devotes time every week to help me get better. And we've grown three times the size we were when I joined the association in 2022.
Man, that's awesome. And
Yeah.
yeah, like, kudos and congrats to just like your continued success, like I said earlier. And it's onward, right? It's going to continue to progress. And knowing you, being very goal driven, I have no doubt. But no, I had no idea that Tom DeBlas. I don't know him personally or even professionally. I just kind of know him from what I've seen on social media. But I remember when we spoke off air and you were kind of sharing, things that you were going through and why you wanted to make that transition. And I respect that because not it's like it's like we tell our students, like, as amazing instructors that we are or think we are not the instructor for everyone. And what I'm hearing from you is you belong to an organization and you picked up a lot of pros from it, but nothing's perfect. And I love how you gave credit to Tony just now and how he was essentially grooming you on how to run a business without, that financial risk. And I think that's so key because a lot of times in any facet of business, we think that it's like we think our way is the only way, and then what happens? People open up a business, and unfortunately, it doesn't go the way as planned. And then when you mentioned how Tom is very hands-on, and that's something I did not know. I think that's pretty awesome. I can see why you wanted to make that jump, if you will, and I can tell that like maybe you haven't looked back ever since.
Yes, I really appreciate my time with Grace University, and their methodology and their approach to jujitsu is something I admire.
Yeah.
And there's nothing I have nothing negative to say. I and especially Hero. I've kept in somewhat touch with him, and he actually taught a seminar. It's probably about a year and a half ago here in the Carolinas.
Yeah.
And one of my students who came to me because he was a Grace University student at a different school, went to his seminar, and my student was wearing my logo and our white and teal gi is one of the colors we have, and he wouldn't recognize the logo right away, which says great marketing on my part.
Hmm.
And he goes, "Hey, isn't that Teddy's school?" And he goes, "Yeah." And Hero goes, "Hey, tell him good job." And I said hi, and that really meant a lot to me. And it that I left on good terms, and there's no hard feelings. Um, you, Tom was a teacher before he was a jiu-jitsu instructor, and his gym now has been open 21 years. And I wanted someone relatively closer that I can learn from and mentor from. And at the time, when I opened my location, I was still a purple belt, and I knew I couldn't be the smartest man in the room.
Hmm.
And the only way that this was going to grow and be successful is if I surrounded myself with someone that was a little closer that could give me advice on a regular basis, or on what I needed to recognize, or what I was trying to do, what mistakes I needed to learn from, and things like that. And Tom presented that opportunity, and it helped me a lot, and it
Yeah.
allowed me to grow. And nothing's smooth. There's ebbs and flows to everything, but he's helped me navigate that process and allowed me to be really successful.
That's awesome. Yeah. And the name of your school is what? The Twisted Kraken?
Twisted Kraken.
Yeah, Kraken. Yep. Yeah, guys, look at that right there. So that was established in 2020, I see.
Yep.
But originally wasn't that name because when you were a certified training center, it was, very specific to the town and city that you're actually no, no, I take that back. Was that the name of the school?
Hmm.
Yep. Okay.
So I branded my own name and everything else upon opening and everything like that, and stuck to that and everything, and it's worked out really, really well.
Yeah, and I remember you specifically I think it was a might have been a video call, but I remember you specifically said, yeah, if you're going to open up a CTC or a school, branding is important just in case if things don't work out. And I'm sure that was kind of the mentality going in. I think that's a very catchy logo, but talk to more about the business side, right? So anytime I get to talk to instructors, in any area of martial art, regardless of style, I like to kind of use the analogy like we wear a lot of different hats. We're not just instructors, and
Oh yes.
I think the teaching part is the easy and fun part, and that's probably what most people think it just is. But as a business owner, me like meaning yourself, talk to us about like a typical day in the life of Teddy, right? So you wake up and take us from there.
So first they never tell you how much you're going to clean.
Oh, for sure, absolutely,
you know,
yes.
luckily as a young junior Marine, I learned very well on how to clean floors and scrub decks. And so that's the first thing. The second, there's a lot of cleaning. There's just a lot of cleaning.
Yeah,
Uh,
which is
and
important, by the way. For those,
absolutely.
yeah, for those watching, hygiene, especially during the COVID era, and I always equate it to this, right? If I was gonna have you come over my house or anyone come over, I would want to have it professional. So I look at it more from a business sense. If students are going to come in, I want to make sure that the academy, that the dojo is well presented. And sometimes it's easy to have those things kind of go by the wayside, but as a school owner, if you value the product, you value everything that encompasses that.
Absolutely. And especially with a ground martial art, you're putting your faces in random places. So
Yeah.
you want to make sure the surfaces are clean.
Hmm.
Uh, so there's that. But for the most part, my education background, I have a bachelor's in business management. I have two master's degrees, one an MBA in finance and a master of science in human resources. And so a lot of that encompasses my accounting and doing my books. Uh, Twice a week, I devote to marketing. One of those meetings every week is to a graphic designer, and then the second one is always like where I devote 30 minutes a week to all my social media posts. And YouTube's amazing. Learning how to navigate Instagram and Facebook early on was very important. But then I literally schedule all my postings for the whole week in that 30-minute block. So I'll make them in 30 minutes to an hour, and then I'll put tabs actually in those posts to post the next day or so on and so forth. So there's always continuing to flow.
Yep.
So there's that. And then once a week, I have a coach's kind of style conversation with my assistant coaches on what we're doing that week and what's the focal point in terms of our curriculum. Our curriculum is broken down by position.
Hmm.
So, like for example, the month of November is guard, and so going through this week, this week's meeting was all right. We're doing guard passes for adult fundamentals, and then kids fundamentals class. And which guard passes are you going to be teaching? What focal points, things like that we need to work on. So I do that with at least my assistant head coach, if not with multiple coaches. And then usually after that, just check promotions, make sure promotions are on track. You never want kids to feel like they're being skipped over or things like that. Kids will never quit on the mat. They'll quit on the car ride home when they don't get the promotion, or when they get yelled at, or when they feel like they failed. They're never gonna go to you on the mat and go, you know what, coach, I don't want to be here anymore.
Hmm.
Because they're gonna that kind of children don't want that kind of conflict with an adult. They feel like they're letting that adult down, or they're scared to have that conflict. They're gonna quit in the car ride home, telling their mom and dad they don't want to come back.
Yeah.
So you want every kid to leave with a positive experience. And so certain things you can avoid is by like skipping over their promotions and things like that. So
Yeah.
I use a software called Kicksite. They're a Kansas City based company from my hometown, and they're a very large organization now. They've grown over the last few years. They'll do your student tracking software, so your promotions, manage your schedules. You can communicate, mass communication through it, do your billing, and then ultimately also they do website management. So my website's built through Kicksite, through their software guys and web engineers and designers, and they also manage it continuously. And I pay them a small fee every month to do so. So there's a quick Kicksite plug. I hope they pay me. Um, Besides that, though, after that, then it's just coming in, getting in make sure the place is clean, make sure I didn't miss anything, and then start of the day. We teach 29 classes a week. I have a staff of 5 coaches, not counting myself. My gym is split, so I have 2 separate mat rooms. Both rooms are 1,500 square feet, with one side having about 1,200 square feet of mat space, the other side 1,100, and then between those 2 rooms, we do a small kids class, a 4 or 6 year old group we call Little Krakens, and then on the other side is our Junior Krakens, which is our big kid fundamentals class. We teach those classes simultaneously, so when a kid ages up, the parents don't have to change the schedule. They
Mm.
literally just go right next door, and then from there, the class immediately after that is our intermediate or advanced kids class in one room, and our adult fundamentals in the gi, and then the following class after that is a no gi class for an hour and a half. And so we teach 7 classes a day, 4 days a week, and then we teach. I also teach in another adult class on Fridays, just a 1 hour kind of like open mat kind of class. And so 29 classes a week, and then we do 15 tournaments a year.
Wow, dude, that's awesome. And
Yeah.
Yeah, so much to kind of unpack there, but ultimately what I'm hearing is that, aside from being an amazing jiu-jitsu instructor and practitioner, there's a lot of the business end that a lot of people don't take into consideration. And you said that you have um a team of assistant instructors, including yourself.
Mhm.
So I'm curious, Teddy, what qualities do you look for when you're hand selecting your, potential assistants? Do they come to you seeking to be helpers or instructors, or is it something like maybe you see a quality in them and that you feel like, hey, I feel like this person could really could benefit from being an instructor here at this academy? And like, yeah, I'm just curious, like, what do you specifically look for in them?
Yeah, so there's two things. One, we have a motto here, it's literally painted on my wall, your success is our success.
Hmm.
And I live and die by that here, that, it's the mantra that is very near and dear to my heart. And so uh, every single adult that comes through the class that's trains on the mat, I ask them what their goals are. Like, we all want to think that we want people to win trophies or medals and stuff like that, but ultimately, uh, most practitioners, they don't want that. What they want is a family, or they want a physical outlet, or they want exercise, or they are trying to overcome a fear, or they're trying to achieve a goal outside of winning a plastic medal or a trophy. And so usually a lot of that comes to dialogue of like, well, what's your goals? Well, my goals are X, Y, and Z. And then, well, you can't just have that conversation once. You got to continue to have the conversations. And so a lot of times those goals of exercise or family then become, oh, I really enjoy doing this. I want to help spread it. And that's kind of one way you can identify it. The other way you can identify it is some of the parents are just here because they want to do a hobby with their kids. And because of safety reasons, we can't have adults and little kids train at the same time. So what I tell a lot of the parents is, if you want to share the hobby, train and help coach.
Yeah.
And so for a lot of the parents, I've had a lot of success where the parents are here learning as a hobby, but their most enjoyment is to do help coach and be around their kid and other kids, as the kids are learning it
Yeah.
and helping make a difference. And so that's another way I have identified it in terms of for the kids and to coach the children. You're looking for not only a personality type of being a good parent, or being a good, be able to speak without screaming, or how to have good dialogue and explanation, but you're looking for a level of patience and understanding. Someone that kind of understands that, especially children, they're not going to learn the technique perfectly the first time. I've had explained to some parents, not just the coaching staff, but just parents in general, you know, these kids, they're 9 years old. How long do you want them to do jujitsu for?
Yeah.
If it's going to take time and it's going to be a level of perfection, and they're not even going to accomplish a black belt for at least another 12 years. So what are we going to do in the meantime?
Yeah.
Are we going to hammer them and push them down, or are we trying to build them up and trying to put things into perspective? And that's having coaches that have that similar vision allows you to constantly have positive reinforcement and positive feedback, and giving a positive environment to the kids. So, like I mentioned before, where we don't have kids quitting on the ride home.
Yeah, for sure. And there's a motto that I really live by, especially as an instructor, and I'm sure you would agree. People don't care what you know until they know that you care. And that's so true as an instructor, right? We have to be able to kind of spread that information or the knowledge base in a way where they can understand. But I like how you mentioned about educating the parents, because I think a lot of times and I would probably say this for like junior instructors or even just assistants and maybe even head instructors. I think a lot of times when we're teaching, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves, especially parents watching. But what I've learned, Teddy, is that most of these parents, if they're actually invested as far as watching, they're curious too. And I've had parents come up to me and say, "Man, like I'm learning jujitsu just like kid is, but they're not actually physically out there. And then what happens is, people will do what people like them are doing. So most of the time, and it's not an exact science or anything like that, and I don't know the exact percentage, so forgive me, but sometimes I've noticed that kids will start and then their parents will start afterwards because they realize like, oh, I can do this. And it comes from that, specific curriculum or just, ensuring safety, which I know that you do. So that's awesome that you've kind of divided the classes, into obviously age groups. But you said something that was pretty cool. So when a kid ages out, instead of having them move to a different time slot, you have them keep the same time, but they just go to the next class. I think that's brilliant, actually,
I
because
appreciate it, man.
yeah, because it's consistency, and people don't want to have to change, even if it's just 45 minutes or sometimes even 30 minutes up. Because I've learned that can make or break sometimes
Absolutely.
because people love routine.
100%. And and then the other part of that was, I think the biggest level of success I had in terms of getting more adults was having one of my kids' classes at the same time as one of my adult classes.
Yeah.
So one of my adult fundamentals class on Mondays and Wednesdays is the same time as my kids' intermediate class.
Mm,
So when kids we utilize the IBJJF promotion system.
yeah.
So when kids get their first belt, they're at the 6 month mark. When they go to a year, they're eligible for their second belt, their full gray belt in the IBJJF system. So at 1 year, they're getting out of like this probationary white belt period, and that's when we move kids or offer to move kids away from the kids fundamental class or kids intermediate or kids advanced class, depending upon maturity, size, athletic ability, desire to compete or not compete.
Yeah.
And so on Mondays and Wednesdays, our intermediate class goes, and on Tuesdays and Thursdays, our advanced class goes. Well, at this point, dads and moms alike are watching their kids train for a year. So when I move the kid, I always approach the parent like, okay, you've watched it for a year now. What do you think about trying out class? You're not going to have to add any more time to your schedule. I give it a family member discount. And while your kid's training on one side, you can train on the other, and you both go home happy.
Yeah.
Let me give you a free trial and let me see what you think. And in this month alone, I've had 5 registrations just based off of that approach. And a lot of the dads are giving it positive feedback because they feel like they're not giving up time away from home. They're not losing time with anyone. They're there when their kids are training. The kids and them are actually learning the exact same thing at the same time. So
Yeah.
now their 9-year-old and them are driving home and they're talking about the guard pass they just did that night or that submission they just did, and they're talking about what to do. And dad and son, or mom and daughter, or vice versa, they all can. They go home and they're like, "Oh, we practiced it at home too," and that's been a huge level of success, like in terms of my growth.
Yeah, absolutely. And something else that you just noted, and well, actually, just to piggyback, I love how you mentioning how the dads and the sons, or just the parents and the kids, they get to talk about jujitsu even after class. I think that's pretty special, and I hear that often as well. Something that I'm curious about before we kind of jump into your black belt training, because I definitely want to hear more about that, is if we can agree that as a martial arts instructor, there's only a short window of time that we get students for the most part, because I would say on average, at least from what I've noticed or heard, is typically you get a student maybe for like 2, 3 years if you're lucky. Most don't stay that long for whatever reason. It's the seasons of life, as I say. But I know you have a wealth of knowledge and you've invested so much time into this craft and this industry. But ultimately, Teddy, for any student coming in, that walks into your academy, ultimately, what message do you want them to know? Like what do you want them to remember about, the Twisted Kraken, or yourself, whether they're here for 2 months or a year? Like, what's the big message or the big picture that you want them to leave with? And it doesn't just have to be kids, it can be adult students as well.
So it's a different approach for kids and adults.
Yeah.
Uh, and I can't speak for the country as a whole, but in terms of this community here, we have like a zero tolerance in terms of like physical altercations at schools, and because of that, even if you stand up for yourself, you're going to get in trouble.
Yeah.
And so a lot of children, they become diminished. You know, they don't use their voice. They try to just be a face in the crowd, quiet, non-confrontational, and they're kind of just weaving in and out, and just trying to avoid any sort of issues. And when you come across a bully and you're alone and you're quiet and you're diminished and submissive, that's an all-you-can-eat buffet for a bully.
Yeah.
And so for the children, I preach all the time: find your voice. Uh, in our little Krakens class, or 4 and 5 year old class, they scream for like the first 3 minutes of class. I'm like, is everybody ready? And
Hey there, Teddy.
over their ears. And the whole point, I want them to be geeking up. I think I lost you for a second. Are you back?
Yeah, I'm still here. Thing you kind of froze for a moment. Sorry.
Okay, good. So uh, you froze too.
Okay.
So, but my whole goal for them is to find their voice, and regardless of what else they do, or how athletic they are, if they leave here with a level of confidence and understanding legitimately 16 techniques that have the kids in that class learn,
Yeah.
and where they can defend themselves and they can use their voice and be able to stand up for themselves, that's huge.
Yeah.
uh, and so specifically for them, for the older kids, it's about gaining confidence.
Yeah. I agree.
And we talked before about the style of instructor or personality traits. If you're the kind of person that just like nitpicks and destroy, and you think you're being constructive but you're being destructive, yeah, that's the wrong mentality.
Yeah.
uh, Kids are told all day long what they do wrong. Every adult the entire day tells them what problem they missed, what question they answered wrong, how late they were, how sloppy they're tired. And the entire day is
Yeah.
negative feedback.
It's
And
critique, critique.
yes, and then they have, and especially teens, then you have other teens telling which teens are popular and unpopular, or which clique. So when they walk through your door, they have been nitpicked and critiqued the entire day. The last thing they want is for you to tell them the million things they did wrong in jiu-jitsu,
Mm.
right? And so when we're putting things in perspective, that a 13-year-old can't get a black belt for 8 years if they're amazing. Eight
Yeah.
more years. Are they supposed to just get hammered and critiqued for 8 years? Or do we try to find a better way to present things to be able to grow their confidence and say, okay, today I want to focus on this one detail. All right, we're going to focus on this. If we're doing an arm bar, just for example, okay, today I'm focusing on, if I'm doing an arm bar from close guard, I just want them to get both knees high and tight. One knee to the armpit, one knee to the ear, the feet come down like fangs. I just want them to focus on this one area. I don't, everything else is, we can work on that next time.
Yeah.
Today we're going to focus on this one detail. And now they're not getting critiqued on a million things. They know exactly what you're looking for, and they're getting better at that one detail. And now, by the time they leave, they feel like they accomplished something,
Yeah.
rather than, man, coach was on me all day today. And now they're driving home and they don't feel better. They feel worse than when they came in. We can't have that. And regardless if you're trying to keep them for 2 or 3 years or what have you,
Yeah.
uh, when they leave the door, they should feel like they accomplished something, and that they're at least 1% better than when they showed up.
Absolutely.
And then for adults, uh, if they when they leave, I would just tell you, like, if they ever transition, and we have a very transient community because of the Marine Corps. Every 2 or 3 years, it pretty much, by the time you get your blue belt, it's time for you to PCS
Yeah.
and move to your new duty station. And so I feel like that's the hardest part of the business, is in the adult program is trying to keep growth and everything else in this community. So, when people leave, in terms of like their personality and everything else, I want to feel like they had a sense of family here,
Yeah.
you know, and that they had a community that didn't care about what rank or job they did in the Marine Corps. They cared about them as a person. And so that's my most important thing for the adults in terms of that atmosphere is a sense of belonging.
Dude, I love it. And something that you said, and I agree with you as far as, these kids, and it was a great reminder of me just for me just now. You talk about these kids go through so much different like young life stresses, if you will, and being constantly corrected or made fun of. Or who knows? I mean, sometimes we have to kind of put ourselves back to when we were kids, and it's different nowadays. I know that because, kids and even the young teens, they tell me like the things they go through in school, and I can only imagine, what that, got to be like in person. But we talk about this often in class, Howard and I, where, when it comes to the correction strategies, which I know you're very familiar with, like with Gracie University, but aside from that, I think of it as like making a deposit in the bank. So each kid that we see, it's like an investment, right? And meaning that how we correct them shouldn't necessarily happen right away. Because let's say you're a student, right? Or brand new student, and you're trying something, brand new for the first time, even as an adult, especially adults. Let's say we're doing clinch, right? Helmet hit hug, and you missed the helmet part. It's like internally it's like Teddy, get your helmet up. But like it's not that difficult, right? Now, of course, I
Mhm.
might not say it that way, but if you missed a helmet, I'd be like, hey, nice job, right? And it might seem a little not condescending, but a little weird, like, oh well, I missed a helmet. Why is he saying good job? Because ultimately what we're doing is building a rapport. And if you have like if I give you all these deposits, that's that's good because then when it comes actually time to make a correction, we've already built such a good rapport that now you trust me that if I say, hey, everything looks good, just don't forget the helmet. And you're like, oh, that makes sense. Instead of it being the very first time we ever interact. And that's helped me because every student learns different and they react differently to what's being said. But I like your approach of just remembering that, especially for kids, they go through a lot of stuff that we don't see. And the last thing they want to hear is how well or how well they didn't do a technique, So that was a good reminder, man. So thank you for sharing that.
Of course.
All right, so now before we kind of yeah, tee off here, I'm interested to know like what was your black belt journey like? Like what was that test like if you're able and like, willing to share that because, for those that are in the martial arts, especially in jiu-jitsu, if done the right way, like a black belt is something that doesn't just happen overnight. It takes a lot of time, dedication, sacrifice. So when you got your black belt, man, like what was that feeling like? And what was everything like leading up to that moment? Not from the time you were a white belt, but probably like the last few months were, before you tested. If you did test.
Yeah. So, in terms of getting accepted for my black belt, it was it was double. It was a two-sided coin. So the first side was the business and the coaching side.
Yeah.
Um, so for a better part of 2 years, I was sitting with Tom being in New Jersey, me being in North Carolina. I would have a camera propped up in between students. So if the students are lined up against the wall, I would either have a student or a tripod holding a camera,
Hmm.
watching me teach. And I would send that to Tom every week
Mm.
so that he could see how I taught fundamentals, how I taught the advanced techniques, how I taught kids. And he would give me feedback on how to coach or, hey, this technique I teach this way, and here's the reason why. And where we would get on the same coaching page and things like that. Then on top of that, he wanted feedback on, I needed feedback on how do I coach a corner at a tournament? How do I prep competitors for pro matches and pro cards, pay per view events, things like that. So I have a competitor just started doing pro matches this year. How did I prep him for that? And how did we go through those kind of things? And that's the kind of mentorship that Tom wanted to share and everything else. Because as a black belt, you should know how to do those kind of things. If somebody came in and said, "Hey, I wanted to be, I want to get on pro cards for jiu-jitsu," uh, he would expect a black belt to know those answers.
Yeah.
Then getting so there's that. Secondly, how do I market and those kind of things? He would give me feedback on the social media stuff. Then it became just like personal development. Some of that was on the mat, some of that was off the mat. How do I make myself more presentable? How do I make myself uh, the ideal kind of jiu-jitsu coach that you used to walk in and expect to see and hear from? Some of that was rolling and feedback. You would get some of those things. We made some physical fitness goals and aspirations for that. And then, um, so when I had to deal with my sparring and things of that nature, he would be able to give me better feedback on growth and everything else. Because you gotta realize, like, with it being virtual, either you get this kind of feedback from a distance and then you go there every 6 months and train and roll, like I did with Tom, or you show up and it's almost like you buy a belt
Yeah.
and or go through a testing process and you commit all this time but you never get feedback along the way and then you fail and you have to come back the next year and it's just brutal. And
Yeah.
so those just weren't the cases. And so Tom and I, he gave me a list of things I needed to accomplish or work on, and I would show him evidence of that, and we kind of go through that list. And then after 2 years as a brown belt, then he was like, "All right, let's do it." And then he came down for a seminar and everything else. We promoted a bunch of other people, and then afterwards he promoted me my black belt, and it was an amazing experience, man. The last 5 years has been a journey, and I'll tell you this: uh, 5 years ago, if someone had said like this was the most stable thing in my life, I would tell you were crazy. Um, I tell people all the time I was in a major motorcycle crash. I suffered a major TBI, a stroke, and the traumatic brain injury clinic on Camp Lejeune, they saved my life. And afterwards, my now ex-wife, she suffered breast cancer at the same time,
Mm.
and we went our separate ways. And literally, all that's left standing for me is the gym and what we accomplished here, and it's a dream.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful. I'm proud. I'm proud of what Tom helped me build. I'm proud of what I've accomplished here. Uh, I never thought that I would get to this point where I'm teaching 29 classes a week, and I got people texting me in the middle of the night like, "Coach, I just love today's class. I completely never thought of this detail of this technique. It was like it blew my mind." And I'll get text messages like that throughout the night on Instagram or my cell phone, and uh, it's a dream come true, man.
Yeah.
I'm retired. I retired from the Marine Corps in 2023, and I'm looking back, and I'm living the jiu-jitsu dream now. I live by the beach, teaching
Yes.
jiu-jitsu,
Yes.
and there's life doesn't get better.
Dude, that's so awesome. And um it's no surprise, at least I can say that just knowing you, from a professional sense, excuse me, and just seeing how far you've come. And I know we don't get to keep in touch as much as I would like. I do my best to, see what you're posting on social media. But anytime you've reached out to me, man, probably, within the 5 years, I think, but maybe it's been a handful of times we've connected off air. But yeah, I really value connection, and I know you feel the same way. And you said something how like you'll get messages from students and text messages. Um, Same way, like even some of the instructors here that we have will say something like, very similar. And it's nice to know that what we're doing is positive. And man, there's days I come in and I'm sure it's the same for you. Like, I feel like, man, I could have taught that a little bit better, but sometimes our worst teaching could be someone's best class. So it's just crazy how that is. But yeah, it's just loving what you do. I think that's the key, passion. And I know you have that, and you continue, like your school is going to thrive, and your students are very lucky to have you, Teddy. So what's next for you guys, or like what's next for you before we close out? Like, do you guys have any events coming up before the end of the year, or is there anything big happening in 2026 that you want to share?
Yeah, so there's a handful of things I still love to share. So, one, I always do. I'm a WeDefy training facility.
Nice.
For people that don't know, WeDefy is a scholarship foundation that's meant to support veterans that are at least 80% disabled,
Yeah.
and they'll pay for 1 year of jujitsu training or up to your blue belt or your first adult belt promotion. And so they also give you 2 free gis, and the school gets paid directly from them. You don't get paid and have to pay the coach. We just send an invoice to Weedify, they pay us.
Yeah.
Well, the only way that that foundation keeps working is if the schools do fundraising. And so I do an annual fundraiser every Thanksgiving. We do it 10 a.m. every Thanksgiving, and I teach a seminar that's completely free. And then what I ask for is just donations to the Weedify Foundation.
Nice.
And so we do that every year. And so we'll do that this Thanksgiving. I'm teaching a lasso guard seminar on Thanksgiving at 10 a.m. And then before that, we do a kids game day as well. And that allows the kids to get out of whoever's cooking way. And, you can come train as well as an excuse for the adult in the house that trains to escape and get out of the way. And so it's a great time. And the end of the kids' game day, I circle them all up and I ask them the same question every year: what are you thankful for?
Yeah.
And so it's always amazing answers, and it's a fantastic time. So that's every Thanksgiving. So that's our major event that's left on the calendar. That'll be this Thanksgiving. We do tournaments throughout the year, and we got a couple tournaments coming up, but that's just pretty normal stuff. The other thing is, every chance I get, I always give 2 warnings for any potential gym owner. Like, so if you have a jujitsu practitioner that's listening to your podcast and they are saying, you know what, I want to open a gym, I want to open a Twisted Kraken. I tell this to anybody that ever thinks about opening. The number one mistake that people make is that they try too big too soon.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and I saw it a lot when I was, with Grace University, with yourself, and GU. You go to this 10,000 square foot warehouse in this beautiful building that has a 3,000 square or like 7,000 square foot mat and 3 private rooms and a clothing section off to the other side of the warehouse. And you go home and you want to mimic that and open up something similar, and you're $350,000 in debt.
Yeah.
And yeah, you have this amazing facility that's not even half full, and you've never scaled your business.
Yeah.
You know, um, we, our first 3 years, we expanded every year. I didn't take profit out of the business. I built capital. And then at the end of that year, I expanded some sort of way. Right. So we were in a smaller facility our first 8 months. And then I expanded that year to our this location, which was just half this size. Then the end of that second year, I added more mats. The third year, I took the next space next door and doubled in size.
Nice.
And what that did was it never put me in a financial bind where I had this enormous amount of stress while trying to still be an active duty service member
Yeah.
and a business owner. And it allowed me also to manage my costs to the consumer. So I never had to like overcharge. I was still very competitive in the market in terms of pricing, and allowed me to be able to continue to grow without having this heavy, red number hanging over my head. So that would be my one warning for them. And for any instructor, this is the advice I give every potential new instructor. If I came to your gym to teach, I could give you a 5-hour seminar on a lot of techniques,
Sure.
right? Don't, every new instructor wants every student to leave the door being perfect. And they open the fire hose and slam the water in your face.
Yeah.
Uh, you mentioned before about, maybe it wasn't, I didn't teach my best class. You said that those words.
Yep, yep.
And I'll tell you that the reason why the other person got something out of it was maybe it wasn't your best class, but you presented that one detail that they needed really, really well.
Yeah.
And if you can just focus on doing that and taking notes on what details you focused on so that you can circle back when you're teaching a technique again and saying, okay, last time, like this, everyone knows a trap and roll escape. It's universally known in jiu-jitsu. All right, maybe you emphasized bridging your hips the first time. Well, this time maybe I emphasize on where I'm supposed to look, or how do I use my backhand, or how do I trap the arm better? And you pick one of those details,
Yeah.
and then you make a note of it that, hey, I taught this technique on this date, and I emphasized this detail. So when you go back, 3 months later, 5 months later, whatever, if you depending on how your curriculum is written, and look at, I emphasize this detail. I'm going to focus on this detail instead. And now you're constantly giving new details. It looks a little more fresh. You're not reading a script, so to speak, where it sounds like they're rewatching the same movie.
Over again. Yeah.
Yes. And so it's always new and fresh. Just a little bit different. It will go a long way.
Yeah, for sure. And I think ultimately, right, the big message is just caring not only for your students, but caring for the business and caring about what you're teaching. Because, man, what I've noticed is, and I do my best not to portray what I'm going to mention, but you can't half-ass it, because
Right.
students will pick that up, especially kids, because kids read energy and sometimes and it's no excuse as far as it's something that Howard's always mentored to me is even on your worst day, man, you got to give them your all because your one day that you don't give them at least 90% to 100, that could be the day. And like you said, they go home in the car thinking, yeah, like I didn't like class today. And maybe the core reason was because the instructor didn't give them their 100%. And it's those little things that we talk about. It's funny that saying in life, don't stress the small stuff. In jujitsu, you can't, right? You have to stress the little things and not stress over it, but put more detail into it for sure.
Absolutely.
Man, Teddy, this was great. I really appreciate you coming on today. I feel like we could talk, forever. It's like a long distance friend that, we just pick up right where we left off. And at some point, I don't know when, I would love to still come down to North Carolina and, check out the school. And then I love that you're at the beach because I think that would be amazing.
Yes. We're about a 20-minute drive away. And it's always a pleasure, man. I'm really proud of everything you accomplish and
Thank you.
how
Same
far
here.
you've grown. It's been, what, 6 years now?
Yeah, January 2020. Yeah, it's been six
Yeah.
years. Well, yeah, close to
Pretty
6 years
close.
coming up.
Yeah. It's gone by quick. And, shortly after we first met, COVID hit
Mm.
and how quickly life changed so fast. But no, I'm really proud of everything you accomplished and what you're doing. And this podcast is a great way to spread the love of jujitsu and other martial arts. And once again, man, you're doing amazing things. I'm not surprised.
Thank you, Teddy. And one last thing before we wrap it up, where can people find your social media if they want to get in touch or if they're ever in the area or just want to know more about you?
Yeah, so they can go to our website, twistedkrakenjiu-jitsu.com. Facebook is Twisted Kraken Jacksonville, and Instagram is Twisted Kraken JJ.
Nice. Well, guys, here you have it. And today this was Teddy's opportunity to talk about a little bit of his story and talk about when he trained and his transitions from different organizations to ultimately where he is today. And he really dived into the mindset of running a school, not just the teaching side, and giving your 100% all and just really caring about not only the students but what you do. So, yeah, man, thank you so much for being on the Kumite Lifestyle podcast, and hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, buddy.